In this video, we are going to create a simple code generator by using HTML, CSS and Alpine.js. Also, we are going to use a API to get the code from. So this is very simple. This is the code and we can either click here or refresh the browser and it will get us a new code. Also, we got the name of the author. So let's get into it. At first, let's create the markup, and the markup is going to be very simple. Just let's create a div with the class of card, because this is kind of a card, right? After that, let's put a header text, maybe code for the day. Okay, after that, I'm just going to create a div here which will contain the code. So I'm just going to give it a class of code so we can style it. Inside it, let's use a block code, and for now let's use some dummy lorem ipsum text as a code here. Okay, after the code we want to put the name of the author, right? So let's use a paragraph tag to do that. I'm just going to give it a class name. The class name should be author. Okay, again we are going to use dummy text. Fine. Now after that, I want to put a button here, so whenever we are going to click this button, the code is going to be refreshed and giving us a new code. So let's just create a button here, and the button text may be new code, because that's what this is going to give. So this is very simple, and this is our markup. We don't need to do anything else here. Now let's move on to the style.css and add a little bit of styling. So I have added and created the style.css. So this is the Montserrat font, this is the simple reset, and I have also added the font family of Montserrat in here. So I want the card at the center, so we are going to target the body here. Let's make it display flex so that we can actually center the elements inside the body at the center. And we also need to give it a minimum height of 100 viewport height, because otherwise it will only take the height of its content, which is now only this much. But in order to make the content at the center, we want to give this body a whole 100% height. So that's what it is, 100 viewport height. Now we are going to make it center, so let's just use justify content center and also align items center. So that will make the content both around the flex axis and also against the flex axis center. Okay, let's also give this a background color, kind of bluish color. So I'm just going to use a hexa color code here, 5372F0, I think. Okay, this should be it. Now let's target the card and give this a different type of background color. I want the background color to be totally white. Let's use triple F, or you can just type out white. I'm also going to give this a fixed height like 500 pixels. Now this is properly centered and everything is okay. I also want to make the corners rounded, so we can add a border radius of like 10 pixels. It will be smooth rounded. Fine. Now this is the h2 text, right? The header text. Let's give it a little bit of styling. I want it at the center, so we can use the text align center. It should be at the center now. Let's also add a little bit of padding. So I want the padding at top and bottom, not left and right, because there is so much gap available here already. So for top and bottom, let's use 30 pixels, and from left and right, let's use 0. Now it has some nice gap top and bottom. So after the h2 tag, let's target the code itself. Let's just at first add the padding here. So at the top we don't need any padding because it already got enough space between the H2 text and the code. So let's put 0 for the top, and for left and right let's use 30 pixels, and at the bottom we can use like 20 pixel. Let's also give this a border at the bottom. So I'm just going to use a on pixel solid and the same color we have used as the background, the bluish color. So it looks fine, I think. Now I also want to specify a fixed height, so we can do that later. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is the author. So quote and P, I think that's the selector here. So we have created a div with the class of quote, and inside that we got a paragraph tag with the name of author. We can also use that like paragraph tag, or let's just target the author. Okay, for the author I want to align the text at the right side, so let's do that. Now this is the author name, which is at the right side. I want to reduce the font size a little bit, so let's do that. I'm just going to use 14 pixel. It will be a little bit smaller but readable. I want to add a font style of italic because that actually looks good with the author name. Let's also add a padding top so it will have some gap with the actual quote in here. I'm just going to use 20 pixels. Now let's move on to the button. So there is only one button here. We haven't used any class with it, so we are just going to target the button. And at first let's use a margin with that. So we want a margin at top and bottom to create some gap. So let's use 20 pixel and let's save. Okay, in order to make it center, we can actually give this a margin auto at the this X direction or around the left and right, but this is not actually functional because the button is by default a inline element. What we can do is we can make it display block, and now it should be at the center. Now let's change the background color to the background color of the body. Now we need to change the text color as well, otherwise we cannot see anything. Okay, now by default the border got a border color, so we are just going to make it none. Now there is no border. Let's add a little bit of padding with that. So at left and right or around the x-axis let's use 20 pixels, and at the top and bottom or around the y-axis let's use 10 pixel. It will have a nice effect. Now I also want to make the corners rounded, so let's give it a border radius. You can give it whatever value you want, but make sure you give it a large enough value to make it looks like a pill. Okay, when we hover on that, I want the cursor to be pointer, so let's do that as well. Cursor pointer. Let's also add a hover effect. So let's target the button, and when we are going to hover on that, I just want to change the background color. So let's use a deeper background color, and we have already used this one. So in VS Code, if we hover on that, we can see the demo here. We are just going to push it to the deeper end, and we are going to select this. Okay, now the hover effect is visible and it looks kind of okay. So this is it for the styling. Now let's go to the index.html and add our API and Alpine.js and everything we need. So for the API, we are going to use the Quotable API, and this is the link github.com/lukepive/Quotable. This is kind of his personal project and he created this for free code camp, but anyway we are going to use it. This is totally free license. You can use it in whatever project you want. So this is the API server, https://api.codable.io. You can see many different type of features. You can get codes by IDs, by author names and anything. But we are just going to keep it really simple and just go for a random code in here. So we're just going to need \random with the API URL. So this is the example. So we are going to try it in the browser so we can see it. So it gives back a code inside the content, and we can also see we got tags, length, date added, date modified, but we are just going to stick to the author name and the content. So this is the URL for API. Let's just copy this. We are going to use it later. So at first we need to create a Alpine component, right? Otherwise we cannot work with it. So let's use the xData here to initiate Alpine component, and inside that we are going to need two different things, right? The first one will be the content, which is the actual code, and the second one we need is the name of the author. So we can give it whatever variable name we want, it doesn't matter. So let's use content, and let's make it blank, so we don't have any code now. Now we also need to add the author name, and I am also going to put it blank for now, but we are going to push the data we got from the API inside in here so that we can display it in our browser. In order to get a data from the API, we are just going to use the xinit directive of Alpine. The xinit is for loading anything, loading a function when the Alpine loads. So let's use xinit, and whatever function or whatever task we are going to put inside here, it is going to load when the Alpine loads for the first time in the browser, and that's when we are going to grab the value for the content and the name of the author from the API database, right? So we are going to use the fetch method of JavaScript, but if you don't know anything about this fetch method or asynchronous JavaScript, then I think you should watch out some of the videos that is already in the YouTube. Web Dev Simplified channel got a fine video about that. But this is actually a very big topic, and I cannot actually explain everything in details in this small video, so I'm just going to skip that. So this is how we are going to work with that. We are going to fetch and fetch to the API, and we have already copied the API URL here, so I'm just going to paste it here. So we are going to fetch data from this API. So after getting the data, we need to do something, right? So that's what we are going to do. We are going to put dot, then we are going to grab the data as a JSON element. So response should be the response dot JSON. So we are going to get it as a JSON element. After that, we are going to get the data inside our variables like the content and the author. So let's do that. Data, then okay, now just give this a value. So this is the content here, and it should be equal to the data we have we are going to get from the API. So now we are going to grab the data here, then dot the name of the content here. So we are going to grab the code by using the content. It should be a dot in here. After that, we are going to give this author a value. So let's do that, and it should be equal to data dot author. Let's save. Okay, now we need to show the value of the content here dynamically. So with Alpine we can actually do that pretty easily by using the xtext. Now we are going to show the content inside this variable name in here, so we're just going to push it here. Let's save, and we can see a random data code. and we are going to get this content value from the API, right? If we refresh, it is going to show us a different code every time, but we are also going to change the author name as well. So let's just delete the hard-coded text, and we are going to use the X text here as well. X text, and it should be author. Let's save. Now it is working perfectly. Now if you want to add some dash in here before the author, you can either use the CSS to use a pseudo element like after or before to put a dash in here, or we can just make it really simple and concatenate something like triple dot or dash, and we need to concatenate it. So plus, let's save. Now we got 3 dash before the code, author. Let's also add a space here. Okay, now it looks better. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to add a functionality so that whenever we are going to click this new code, the browser refresh. I have searched for a way to click here and just refresh the component, but I could not find any. So let's use JavaScript to do it. And whenever we are going to click this button, we are going to use the JavaScript to refresh or reload the entire page. So that's what we are going to do, is we are going to create a method in here at the data. Let's name it refresh or whatever you want, and window, because we are going to refresh the window here, location dot reload. This is a JavaScript method, pure vanilla JavaScript method. It has nothing to do with the Alpine. Now whenever we are going to click the button, we want to run this method, right? So let's do that. On click, we are going to run this refresh method here. You can also add a double quote, or you can just omit the double quote. It doesn't actually matter in Alpine. Now it is going to refresh, but the thing here is there are codes that maybe on a single line or multiple line, and every time there is a difference between the previous code and the current code, this is going to looks like kind of flickering or change in the height of the element. So that's why I'm just going to give this a minimum height. So in that case, whenever the text is too much large, then it will extend, but otherwise it will be fixed. So we are going to give it with the code. So let's give it a minimum height here. I'm just going to give it on 140 pixels value. Now it should look constant. Okay, so this was our project. This is quite simple and everything, but if you want to explore more about the API, I think you can actually use the other functionalities in here like length, tags, contents, or we actually use the content already. That you can also use the tags, or you can actually display the tags in here somehow, in here or here. So feel free to explore more or try it out.